honoring October 2021 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's privacy, dignity, security, and humanity due to the systematic use of physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic control and/or abuse. And whereas domestic violence leaves an imprint of fear and hostility, and whereas the problems of domestic violence are not confined to any group or groups of people, but across all economic, racial, affectional preferences, and social barriers, thereby affecting society as a whole. And whereas in the county of Yuba, adults and children are victims of domestic violence each year, and whereas Yuba County Board of Supervisors is committed to restoring the right to freedom from fear in our own homes and in our communities, and whereas in our quest to impose sanctions on those who break the law by perpetrating violence, we must also meet the needs of victims of domestic violence and their children who often suffer grave financial, physical, and psychological losses. Now therefore be it resolved that in recognition of the important work done by domestic violence programs in cooperation with Casa de Esperanza, that the Yuba County Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim the month of October 2021 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and together as a team, we can make a difference in creating hope, health, and healing in our community. This can be done through prevention, intervention, and educational programs, which create zero tolerance for domestic violence in our community. Thank you. Great. Thank you very much.
Good morning, supervisors. My name is Marnie Sanders, technically challenged. Let's see here. And I'm the CEO of the Yuba-Sutter Chamber of Commerce. And share the screen here. Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be before you today to talk to you about Film Commission. This is a really exciting topic for me. We've been talking about this at the Chamber for a number of years, even before my time. It's been a conversation that's been had in this community for at least a couple of decades. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, what a Film Commission is, I'll take you through that. So a film commission does primarily two things. Number one, it attracts the film industry to a community. So they are actively engaging with the film industry and trying to attract production to the area. And the other element to a film commission is that they will basically host that production when it's in town. So they are essentially the liaison. They help them to navigate the community, find the services that they need, products they need. If they need people on the set, they'll find those for them, locations, that sort of thing. So that in a nutshell is what a film commission is. And so why would we want to have a film commission in Yuba-Sutter? Well, it means dollars for our community. Lots of tax revenue is really what we can expect from a film commission. Because of bringing that production to town, you're bringing people who are staying in our hotels, eating in our restaurants, utilizing different services, hiring people to come on the set to do a variety of things. So it's creating jobs and it's creating a lot of tax revenue for our communities. We have a committee of folks who are really interested in seeing this come to fruition in our community. We are partners with the Yuba-Sutter Arts Council. David Reed is very interested. You may have heard of the Conejo Brothers Media. They're participating in this effort. And so this is just something that, for me anyway, is very near and dear to my heart. I think it can be a home run for our community. certainly at the chamber are, we're eager to find opportunities to bring economic growth to our community. And I think a film commission can do just that. And I have a guest co-presenter here with me today. I'm really excited that she's here. We've been doing this presentation to other jurisdictions, and she's been joining us via Zoom or whatever platform is available. And she comes from Reading, from Film Shasta, and Sabrina Jurisic is a film commissioner with Shasta County, and she has been amazingly helpful as we try to navigate bringing a film commission to Yuba-Sutter. She's been with their film commission for a number of years, and she's got a lot of great information and data to share with you to really help reinforce how beneficial this can be to our community. For a very small investment, we can see a huge return over time. And so with that, I'm going to introduce Sabrina, who will take us through what that looks like, and then I'll come back up to close it out. So thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, well, that click didn't work. Maybe I'll use the arrows. Yeah, so Shasta County has a long history actually of serving productions. You may recognize like Stand By Me actually filmed in Shasta County. We have a number of various types of productions that like to use our area. But in 2014, our Board of Supervisors actually provided a designation which helped to form a official film commission. We promote the area as the primary marketing entity for our region. And as Marnie said, we're the liaison between film industry and our community. So anything that they need, locations, crew, all those things that she mentioned, they come to us as the one-stop shop because productions don't have time to build infrastructure for single projects at a time. So having that person that they can connect to that's recognized by the county and by the industry as the local resource for them is critical to success. Again, as she mentioned, some of the benefits include job creation. We do have tax revenue generation. You have the opportunity to attract tourists, and I'll give an example of that later on in the presentation. But it also builds community pride. People get very excited when a production's, on their street or in their town. It's amazing to me how many people want to watch other people work when it comes to film production. We'll just be, working on a street and there's a lot of sit and wait. But people get very excited that their community was chosen. And so there's a lot of conversations. Sometimes we try to help control those conversations until the productions actually are released. We have, but nonetheless, people are very excited, and especially when they get to take part as an extra or even as a crew member, even as a caterer on set. So, and the other thing is that it's environmentally friendly. We have, there's no bricks and mortar, there's no time delay. Productions just come, they spend money, they do what they need to do, and then they leave. And so that's another benefit. This slide here shows just one program. That California has a tax credit program. It's actually run by the California Film Commission. And I like to share this because we invest money as a state to attract productions, to keep productions in California. And most of the productions that take part in this are, major studio productions. So they're spending millions and millions of dollars. And so, but it does help to show the return. And so of the $2.4 billion in tax credits that have been allocated, the qualified expenditures that have been returned is nearly $18 billion. And so, as Marnie said, this of course, our communities, including Shasta County, we don't have millions of dollars to invest in local tax credits. But when we are supporting a position like this, it does help to bring money back into your community. And the average is about 8 to 1. So every dollar of investment, you're getting about $8 back in return to your community. And again, on this is qualified expenditures. So there's some outlying costs that don't get enveloped into that. And so there's actually a bigger spend than even what's shown on here for this program. So this is our film history. It's blocked a little bit. Let me see. We've got good numbers on the end of this chart. We don't want to hide here. So, so dating all the way back to 1918, I found a production of Mount Lassen erupting. So I figured, hey, I found it, so I'm going to throw it here on the chart. That way we can have as much integrity with our numbers here. But what I like to show is basically you kind of see a trickle of productions that we can determine before the designation that occurred in 2014, which is when where you'll see the arrow there. There was an immediate uptick in productions in 2015. And the downturn that you see in 2016 was actually when there was a vacancy within the position. And I like to point that out because it's not something that acts alone just because of a designation. You need somebody who's actively working the position, working with productions. And so having a film commission without a film commissioner doesn't work. So we've had some great numbers in 2000. The numbers just continue to grow after 2017. And that's actually, I started in 2017. So we have had been very blessed with productions increasing year over year. In 2020, obviously we saw a downturn due to COVID. So, but what we primarily lost was commercial productions. And that's because a lot of commercials didn't know what messaging to do during COVID, but we were able to retain some of the larger scale productions. And so on the next chart here, you'll see our economic impact. And so again, this just goes back to 2010. I don't have history before that as far as what productions we're bringing into our community. But in 2014, once the designation hit, again, you'll see that there's this large incremental growth in dollars coming into the community. So we're attracting better productions that are spending more money and staying in our areas longer. 2021, our current year right now, is actually our best performing year. We actually had our highest recorded quarter ever between July and September. So production is still continuing to grow in California. It's something that was COVID resistant because it's considered an essential industry in California. So I worked very closely with our public health department to make sure productions could continue moving forward. So, and keeping our community safe and keeping the people who were working safe. So we are definitely seeing, as I mentioned, just an increase in productions, and the quality of productions in our area. What you also get with the Film Commission is very clear ways of measuring success. So I've listed out a few things here, but from start to finish, we can track the efforts of the Film Commission. So when the inquiry comes, we start asking, how many locals are you planning on hiring? Where are you planning on staying? Do you need referrals to hotels? How many days are you going to be filming? And inevitably, they end up increasing, staying longer, hiring more people, the more that you have the ability to connect them with options in the area. It's very expensive for productions to move to multiple jurisdictions. And so if they can get as much as they can within your community, that is the best thing for them to be connected to. So good. So one of the examples that I wanted to give, just to film tourism, this is an added benefit. We don't have the capacity to track these metrics, but we do see people come. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, Stand By Me filmed in our area. Decades later, we still have people going and putting themselves in the scene. Now, obviously you do need a larger scale production for people to it's not gonna happen on every one that enters your area, but when you do land those larger projects and have people want to kind of set themselves in the scene, they share it on social media, they're still spending money in your community long after the production has left. So it's an added benefit, but we don't count it. And I think, okay, so I'm gonna pass it back to Marnie. Thank you so much.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you. I hope that, well, I thought so. Sabrina paints a really good picture of what Film Commission can do in a community. It's been really successful in Shasta County, and I think it can be really successful here. Something that should be mentioned is without a Film Commission, we are potentially missing out on some big opportunities because the film industry they are looking for a Film Commission in the community when they're looking for locations. They don't want the hassle of trying to figure these things out on their own. So they want that Film Commission that they can connect to. And they're going to overlook a community that doesn't have that potentially. So it really truly is a benefit to the community. As I had said before, we've been going around and giving these presentations. We've presented to the Yuba-Sutter Lodging Association, and I'm really thrilled to share that we have a commitment of $25,000 from them this year. And then we presented to the City of Yuba City, the City of Marysville, and we're actually presenting to Sutter County this afternoon. And I just got word yesterday that the City of Yuba City is going to commit to supporting this effort as well. So we're making some headway. And this slide here will give you a little picture of what we're looking at for the next several years. So this year we're looking to raise $50,000. So we're at we'll be over $30,000 right now. And we are, again, we're almost there. But what that means for this year is the building of the infrastructure. So getting the website built, starting to make connections with some of the affiliations and associations within the film industry. You've heard Sabrina, who is expert. She will be consulting on this program with us to help us get this built out for the Yuba-Sutter community. Then we move into year 2. Hopefully we can bring on a part-time film commissioner at that point, continuing to build out on the infrastructure, but really starting to promote the community to the film industry at that point. And then by year 3, hopefully we have that fully operational film commission, a full-time film commissioner, and a film commission in our community that is actively engaged with the film commission, and we start to see some production come to our community as a result of that. And then we start seeing some of those economic benefits that we saw earlier with the Shasta Film Commission. They have been really successful. I've had conversations with other film commissions that have seen equal amounts of success. El Dorado County has a film commission, which is under the umbrella of their county chamber of commerce, and they see well over $1 million in economic impact as a result of their film commission as well. So I think this is really something that can benefit our community. The other thing about our community is that we're less expensive for these productions to come to. And so we're becoming popular locations now, our smaller communities. And it's already happening here in our community, but I think we can really bump it up to a larger scale so we can see a greater benefit. I've had conversations with producers who are really excited about this and want to get on board and kind of help us to position our community. So we are attracting production, bringing scouts to the area to help scout out locations for productions, that sort of thing. So with that, that pretty much concludes our presentation.
So thank you, Marnie and Sabrina. I was going to say, is there any questions from the board?
Yes, please. So was there a 3-year ramp up for your county when you did it? Or did you guys in 2011 start the process and you didn't have a commission until 2014?
So what it was at the time, the Film Commission is now an independent entity just because of the demand on the position grew to the point where it needed to come out. But it was under our Convention and Visitors Bureau. And so initially what happened was there was a position that already existed within the CVB that also covered the Film Commission portion. And so it was just, here, wear another hat kind of thing. And it was very part-time. I mean, as you saw on the chart, like it just didn't require a full-time position at that point.
what is the thought of why we need to do a 3-year ramp up as opposed to doing it in 1 year? Or is there a reason for a 3-year ramp up?
I mean, I can answer. I mean, I do believe that it takes time. I mean, there's a portion of infrastructure that does not exist right now that, I mean, if you wanted to do the funding, it would help it go quicker. But certainly, you know, first you have to have a website, you have to develop those affiliations. It takes time to get all those things going. So the Board of Supervisors would need to provide a designation to recognize the entity that's going to be doing this. And then, you know, the affiliations that get you on more of the national and international level of recognition that feed you leads. I mean, everything just kind of takes time. And so when we were initially talking about these, I just recommended kind of a stair step just to get you to where it's more palatable for the communities to buy in and start seeing results before they're kind of doing the full-fledged. But if the communities were willing to do that, I think it would be great to do it full-time starting year 1. I mean, certainly somebody could do it full-time.
It's the relational networking that's the essential part to seal the deal. And that takes the time to build.
Well, that relationships are critical in the film industry for sure. But yeah, but then also just the groundwork of, you know, it takes time to go photograph all these locations and building assets to promote the community. So, yeah.
To this chair, have you approached the water agency?
So I have not approached the
Because if you look at their website, they have a number of videos already done about our area.
Yes,
recreation.
they do. They have some great videos. Yes.
You might consider that.
We have had conversations with our consultants, and in those conversations, we've brought up the mention of film commission to them, but that's really the only conversation that we've had. But those, you know, those productions that they put on, I'm not sure who they use, but I mean, those would be productions that we would count in efforts like this.
Okay.
But in terms of, to your question about, you know, doing this all now versus over a period of time, I think while we would love to, you know, just get this going in year 1 and we're, you know, wanting to ramp up as quickly as possible, there is a capacity issue as well. The chamber, we are dedicated to this effort, and we think it will be a benefit to all Yuba-Sutter and economic growth and contribute to a thriving community. And that's right in our wheelhouse of our mission. And so we're really eager to do that. But we want to be thoughtful about bringing this about as well, and make sure that we have, you know, all of the pieces in place, and what Sabrina had talked about with building out that infrastructure and just cataloging our community and what we have available. There's some big components to this project, so we want to make sure that we're doing this right, and that we present our community with our best foot forward when we start reaching out to the film industry.
Thank you.
Through the chair. Marty, how many committee members do you have right now?
We have about half a dozen committee members.
Are any of those elected officials?
There is one, yes.
So are you going to submit a request to each of the jurisdictions that maybe the chairman or mayor of each of the communities actually be on that board on a rotating basis? Mm-hmm. And then financially, how much do you need to get this thing rolling?
All great questions. Yes to your first one. We can form an official committee. This has sort of been an unofficial planning committee. We can form an official committee and have that representation that you spoke about. I didn't want to be presumptive and just come with an ask. I had an intention of following up with a formal request. In year 1, like I said, we're over halfway there. In year 1, I'm looking at 4 jurisdictions, splitting the investment, which boils down to $6,250 in the first year. I will submit my formal request that breaks it down for the 2 years following this. I'll send it to Kevin, who can share it with the rest of you. But year number 1, $6,250 is what we are looking for to help us to build that infrastructure, get the website going, start creating those connections and affiliations with the film industry. And then, of course, the consultation from Sabrina.
So I can only speak for myself. I love the idea. We did talk about this a number of years ago from the EDC and what needs to be done. I think these are great steps. As you well know, that if you're not happy with the way the system's going, let's change it a little bit. And this is a great change. This is a great opportunity. I appreciate your energy pushing this forward. I think you're going to get great support from our community, from our private sector, and certainly from the government sector. We never have enough money to get it all done. However, if the priority is there, we'll try to find that money, whatever it is. And I kind of our responsibility to take a look at those dollars and see how do we encourage that in our budget, we make this happen, because I think your numbers show the story, and that story is beneficial to our community. So I, for one, very supportive, make this thing happen sooner than later.
Thank you, Supervisor Fletcher. I appreciate that.
So I'm also very supportive. It seems like a great opportunity for our community, and I thank you for the effort that you've already put into it, that those working with you have put into it. And if the board is amenable, I would request that once you submit your formal request for assistance and funding, that staff would put that on the agenda and bring it before the board to consider. So is that okay?
Wonderful.
I got a quick comment.
You bet.
I've always been a big supporter or fan of this. And we have a pretty good resume already of some major films that have been here, and a lot of independent films too. So that should help.
Yes, and won't it be grand to be able to track that and what those films are bringing to our community in terms of economic impact?
Yeah.
So, yes. Well, thank you so much. If there aren't any other questions, we'll excuse ourselves.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, next up on the agenda is public communications. Any person may speak about any subject of concern, provided it is within the jurisdiction of the Board of Supervisors and not already on today's agenda. The total amount of time allotted for receiving such public communication shall be limited to a total of 15 minutes, and each individual or group will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Prior to this, speakers are requested to fill out a request to speak card and submit it to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors. That's if you're here in the room, and those cards are back by the door. And if you are participating via Zoom and wish to comment, please use the raise hand function in Zoom, or *9 if you are participating on a phone. Please note, no board action can be taken on comments made under this heading. I do see we have Charles Sharp would like to comment. Do we have any comments from the room before I go to Zoom? Okay, seeing no public.
Chair,
yes.
can they provide lighting so we're just not talking to a black blob?
Sure, we can ask him if he can do that. So
Ghost.
we'll let Charles Sharp speak then. Charles, I don't know if you can do anything about your lighting to make you a little bit better seen, but if so, that would be appreciated.
Sorry about that.
There we go. That works.
Better?
Yep.
Now you can see me better. That's worse. Good morning, Charles Sharp, Oregon House. Today, the Yuba-Sutter Chamber of Commerce made a presentation for a Yuba-Sutter Film Commission. This would be a good endeavor, and I hope the Board of Supervisors will see this as a worthy investment.
Timer.
Also on the agenda is the resignation of County Elections Officer Terry Hansen. Rumor has it that she plans to run for 5th District Supervisor. One of the biggest issues in the foothills is the North Yuba Water District's failure to deliver irrigation water and its intent on selling water outside of the district's boundaries. People are universally against this. With 5 active lawsuits against it, any potential candidate is going to have to address what is going on with this water district. Since the water district did not deliver any water this year, people have been using well water instead. The Hard Rock aquifer is being measurably overpumped, and water is being drawn down faster than it can be recharged. This is not sustainable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Charles.
Yes.
So I do
Thank
not
you.
see any other hands raised on Zoom, nor do I see any additional public comment in the room. I did see we had Someone did put something in the chat related to the Film Commission presentation. Would you please read that to the board, Rochelle?
This message is from Ted Langdell. Sustaining the activity is essential to success. The Film Commission and commissioner that existed decades ago died when the out of community grant funding ran out. That is all.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so with that, I don't see any additional public comment at this time, so we'll move on to county departments on the agenda. First up, we're going to take one item a little bit out of order. So we're going to start with item 519, which is Auditor Controller, approve agreement with Tyler Technologies for financial system software and authorize chair to execute. Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Richard Eberly, Auditor Controller. Before you is a request to approve a contract with Tyler Technologies for the implementation of a new finance system. I'll give you some background, a little bit additional information that's other than on the staff report. We started this process a while ago. As I hope you're aware, I've had conversations with, I think a couple of supervisors about our financial system. Our financial system is about 25 years old currently, and it's operating on technology that's about 10 years older than that. So we're hoping to make a 35-year leap in technology with this change. Currently, our system is plagued with duplications of effort all across the spectrum. There's also a lack of access to a lack of easy access to the financial information. So it makes it really tough to do what we have to do on a financial basis. It's also difficult to support. Over the years, the system has been customized a number of different times, and currently because of the customizations, it's difficult for the vendor to support and also for IT to support because of just the nature of customizing any software. One glaring issue that we have to address with our current financial system is the fact that the vendor ended functional support for it in December 31st of 2020. What basically that means is we're out of warranty. So if something breaks, if something goes wrong, it's going to cost a lot more to fix it than it was in previous years. So prior to basically the expiration of the warranty, we instituted a process with your approval for a business process review to review the financial processes in the county, where they are and where we'd like them to be. That was concluded in 2019. And in 2020, we did a vendor selection process to identify possible vendors to provide a solution for us. And the culmination of that vendor selection process is the contract before you. We've been in months and months of negotiations after evaluating not only the software, but also with the current clients. There was an extensive process to evaluate who's using the software and what their experience has been with that software. And so we feel that Tyler Technologies represents the best option for the county moving forward. And so any questions about that part of the process so far?
Any questions from the board?
We're approving the software, or we're approving the high-low representative who's going to support the transition of the software?
We're pointing that this is a contract for the software.
Okay.
No, so in this situation, a little bit more. This is a more robust software. It's a cloud-based platform. It's not intended to be a premise-based solution, so it allows us mobile access to the software. We've been plagued through this past year for the COVID pandemic about an inability to work effectively on a remote basis. So a mobile solution or a SaaS, a software as a solution or cloud-based service, will allow us to be more agile. It'll also allow us additional opportunities for disaster recovery and also continuity of operations. When we had the flood evacuation a number of years back, we moved the entire emergency operations center up to Nevada City to handle those. But our financial system didn't go with that. And so if we were out of the county for an extended period of time, we would not have had access to our financial operations, and it would have made continuing business operations very, very difficult. So the ask today is an approval of a contract for the $1.7 million. And what that represents is cost of the software and also support costs to assist in the implementation.
Through the chair. So this is not going to include any hardware upgrades.
there might be some hardware upgrades we have to invest in, but not a wholesale computer system upgrade.
Okay,
Most of the hardware will be stored offsite by the vendor.
okay. All right. Thank you. All right.
Any additional board questions?
No, I'll make a motion to approve. the
I
agreement.
have
I think we have a question.
I have a quick question. So where is COA Hills Consulting in all of this?
That's a great question. They've been a partner with us from the get-go, and that's item 520. And I know that's what you've been referring to, Supervisor Fuhrer. But COA Hills has been an implementation partner through the get-go. They have done a number of implementations nationwide and worldwide with these types of software. They're geared toward organizations in our demographic, and they have extensive experience implementing this. They've assisted us in the business process review, and they've assisted us in the vendor demonstration and vendor selection process. They've also assisted us in contract negotiations. They're very familiar with Yuba County's operations and our needs. And so the next item that I bring before the board today will be to address their contract.
So Tyler supplies the software to us and COA is on site implementing it?
They act as project management services for us. So yes, they are helping us implement the system.
Okay, thanks.
No, not a problem.
Okay, I believe I have a motion from Supervisor Vasquez.
Yes.
Do I have a second? And I have a second from Supervisor Fletcher. Is there any public comment on this item, either in the room or on Zoom? Okay. I do not see any, so roll call vote, please, for item 519.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes,
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous.
thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 520, 2021, which we've talked about a little bit. Auditor Controller, approve agreement with COA Hills Consulting LLC for implementation service in conjunction with the implementation of a new financial system and authorized chair to execute.
Excellent. Thank you again, Richard Eberly, Auditor Controller. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We broached the subject a little bit in the last item, but COA Hills is, the contract for COA Hills is for implementation services. They're to assist the county in getting the best and most robust outcome for the implementation of Tyler Technologies. I've spoken with a number of other jurisdictions that have implemented the software, and they tried to do it, source the project management in-house, and they had varied measures of success. As larger organizations had larger budgets and they had larger internal project management staff, they had greater measures of success. But smaller organizations that did not have the resources to dedicate or did not decide to dedicate resources had struggles in the implementation process. So COA Hills being, as I explained earlier, their experience and their expertise in this area makes them invaluable as part of the implementation process. This is they provide a broad spectrum of support, not only implementation, but also change management. There's a necessity to change the perception or attitudes of people towards the change. Most people are not thrilled with change. Anytime something changes, even though it might be for the better, they're not thrilled with it because it's my own little thing. I know it. I love it. Even though it's not helpful, it's mine. And so they've already began the process of assisting us with changing those attitudes. So my request is to approve the contract for COA Hills for implementation services.
Okay, questions from the board?
So on the previous 1.7, how much of that went to COA Hills for the services they provided up to this point?
None of that was included in that.
Okay. And so for this 277,000, is it paying for past services with all the things you described previously, or is it just for this implementation?
Just for the implementation.
And so is it because of the level of IT support here that the outside contractor is going to be providing that transition?
Can I ask you for additional information behind your question? Because I think I have an answer for you. I want to make sure I understand what you're asking. So could you clarify a little bit more?
Sure. So I guess my question is, for 277,000, are we getting one person who's coming in and managing this project? Are we getting a team of people who are putting it throughout the county? Is there you mentioned public perception or the staff to persuade them? Like, what is it? What am I buying for $277,000?
That's a fantastic question. So we will, Cohill's contract, if you've had a chance to review it, and I have it here in front of me, it deals with at least, I think, let me see, 3 people that are mentioned specifically in the contract on page, it's not page 9, it's page 29 of the document. There are 3 people that are involved in it. It's Jeff Merrill, who's a project manager. He will act as the county's representative. Not the county's representative. He will act as the county's a project manager and assist the county staff in managing the project going forward. He has many Tyler implementations under his belt, and he's a certified project manager. Jeff Haas is an interface developer, and Carrie Associate is a data conversion specialist. One of the big issues is converting our existing software data into the new system. So all of those resources are necessary for us to have success.
For the $1.7 million that we're paying the software vendor, they don't have a robust team to transition stuff when they're getting paid $1.7 million for software. That seems like a nice price tag. You would think that they would have support.
No, I think that's correct. That's a reasonable assumption. They do, and those processes are going to be augmented by Cohill's.
You mentioned that some entities had problems integrating or using the software without the Cohill's transition team.
Without someone like Cohill's, I'm not going to say Cohill's, but yeah, out someone like Cohill's, yes.
And so what is the degree or quantity or quality of that problem? What did they have that occurred?
It's the ability to use the system as effectively as they would. There's another county I spoke with that implemented a cash, or that did not implement a cash management module, and they had difficulties interfacing their current cash management receipts process with the Tyler software. So that's one example that I can think of off the top of my head.
But that was something that was resolved and didn't cost them $250,000.
Actually, no, it's not. It's still ongoing right now.
Okay.
So it's not been resolved. No, again, fair question. It has not been resolved, and it's still an ongoing issue.
Thank you.
So Tyler supplies support to COA.
Tyler implements their software, and Cohill's acts as the advocate for Yuba County. Thank you. Cohill's acts as the advocate for Yuba County. There are, in any type of situation, there are people that know how to do things better than we do, and sometimes the vendor has ways they like to do things, and their procedures and their efforts are in the best interest of Tyler, not necessarily in the best interest of the client. And so Cohill's will act as our advocate to make sure we get everything we've asked for and everything that we should get. As I'm thinking about it, I kind of think of a while ago, I had some concrete poured at my house, like a concrete driveway and patio. Now I could build the forms. I could do all that stuff. I think I'm reasonably certain I have the skills to do that. I have the tools to do that and that kind of thing. But it would have taken me a very long time and a lot of extra effort. So I hired somebody who was expert at doing that to help me build that. And it was done in a matter of days, where it would take me at least a number of weeks or months, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what I liken it to, hiring the experts to get it done. But Cohill's works on our behalf. And in our current relationship with Cohill's, they assisted us in the vendor selection contract negotiation process. And their current efforts have already saved us about $190,000 in the contract so far, about $150,000 in ongoing costs, and about $40,000 in one-time costs. So their contract will be paid for within 2 years based on the savings they've already generated for us.
Thanks.
Through the chair. Richard, you mentioned people not wanting to change, and working with Bosch Automotive, one of the largest corporations in the world. We found that initial training, dollar for dollar, saves you 10 to 1 for that initial training. Once you walking on water is easy once you know where the rocks are, and they know where the rocks are. So I just on that note, I'll make a motion to approve the agreement.
Thank you. I agree. That's a very well put. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
So just a quick comment. You know, there are times I think we bought into something, we don't even understand how it works, but it's way over my head. I'd almost rather have 5 people with little recorders and typewriters and keeping charge of the money and put on jobs, but we can't find people to do it. So it doesn't leave us much but to go ahead and move in this direction. It's technology and it's worst and it's best all at the same time. If you'd had dirt driveway that was really compacted, it might be better and a lot cheaper if you did that, but I understand.
Right.
It's probably the better way to go. I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have a first and a second. I have a couple comments and a question as well. So I'm glad to see us getting off of the old system. I think that will be great for the county for a ton of reasons. And so Coa Hills will also, in addition to data migration, which is extremely important, they will also be doing training. Is that correct, of staff? Yes. Or okay, so which is extremely valuable. I know, you know, I have some past experience with IT system implementation, and you can buy a new, beautiful system that has lots of capabilities. And if you don't know how to use it, you don't get your money's worth out of it. And so making sure our employees know how to use it and that it's working properly is, you know, I mean, I hate to use the word priceless, but almost priceless. It's critical to a successful implementation of any system. And so I'm glad that we you know, you're requesting to bring a partner on board to help with that. Because as you said, you know, the vendor's goal is to sell you the software. And they certainly want you to be able to use it. But they don't necessarily always go out of their way to, you know, provide you everything you need to use it to its fullest capability and to transition from your current environment. And so I think it's very important. So with that, if there's no additional questions, I will ask for public comment on this item. Is there any public comment in the room or on Zoom? Okay, seeing none, I will ask for a roll call vote.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford.
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Thank you. It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 501, 2021, Health and Human Services, adopt resolution authorizing Health and Human Services Director to apply jointly with Sutter County and Sutter-Yuba Homeless Consortium to California's Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council for the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program Round 3 funds. Authorize director to execute any and all documents required by the standard agreement to apply form, and authorize director to enter into memorandum of understanding with Sutter County and Sutter-Yuba Homeless Consortium for the combined allocations, including how funds will be administered, and designate Yuba-Sutter Homeless Consortium as the administrative entity upon review and approval of County Council. Good morning.
That's a lot. Good morning, Chairman Bradford and members of the board. Kaya Galicia, Project Manager in Public Health. As you may be aware, the state is making historic levels of funding available to jurisdictions and continuums of care to assess, plan, and implement programs and services to reduce homelessness throughout California. One of these funding sources is the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Grant, available through the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council. The purpose of this funding is to assist people experiencing literal homelessness move into safe, stable housing, and to keep those at risk of homelessness from losing their housing. The funds require regional coordination and a unified regional response, in addition to pairing funds with other local, state, and federal dollars in order to maximize the impact on communities. Our recommendation today is for the Health and Human Services Department to participate in a joint application for round 3 of the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Grant with Sutter County and the Sutter-Yuba Homeless Consortium, who is our local continuum of care and will be identified as the administrative entity. By applying jointly, we will be sure to meet the requirement for regional collaboration, evaluate the success of ongoing programs, and pool resources to fill the gaps in our homeless services delivery system. A joint application will decrease administrative burden on the county and maximize resources spent on activities that will reduce homelessness in Yuba County. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions from the board?
Through the chair, congratulations. That amount will only provide 2 units in Sacramento for Darrell Steinberg's normal $300,000 unit. And with that, I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Second.
Okay, I have a first from Supervisor Vasquez, a second from Supervisor Fletcher. Any additional comments or questions from the board? Seeing,
May I just briefly, there were 4 for action items. They can be taken in one motion because they are so intertwined. But if we could amend the motion to approve all 4 action items, that would be appreciated.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, first and the second are amended. Thank you, council. Any public comment on this item in the room or on Zoom? And just a reminder, if you're on Zoom and wish to public comment, please use the raise hand feature, or if you're called in, you can hit *9. Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhr,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford.
Yes,
And Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
great. Thank you, Kath. Okay, up next is item 536, 2021, County Administrator. Receive presentation on recommended Measure K revenues and appropriations for fiscal year 2021-22 and one-time expenses, and provide direction as appropriate.
All right. Good morning,
Okay.
Chair, members of the board. Kevin Mallon, County Administrator. And I have a presentation, as long as I'm able to figure this out. I'm going to share it like so. Yeah, I'm in screen share. All right, and I'm gonna do that. Got it, Rochelle?
Yeah. And you can actually, if you want, you can actually minimize the little window that shows who's on Zoom.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes, there we go. So
We're playing
see
with
the
that
whole
little-
presentation, not just 90% of it. All right. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. So before you today is kind of an exciting moment in time for Yuba County. This is something, and I'm gonna provide a little background on what Measure K is. But this is an opportunity for the board to have a discussion with staff about the revenues and that are going to be coming in or have been coming in to Yuba County as a result of Measure K, and how to most appropriately distribute those funds to maximize services to our residents. So just by way of background, so Measure K, it's a 1 cent sales tax, and it's in the unincorporated portions of Yuba County. It was approved by the voters in November of 2018. So this is a sales tax. This 1 cent does not apply within the city of Marysville or the city of Wheatland. And another very important point, and this is something that frankly was tied up in court for a while, but this 1 cent sales tax is a general tax. It's not a special tax. Similar to general funds. So the board has full discretion in accordance with what was outlined in the measure on how to appropriate these funds. And another important point is Measure K, it was a 10-year term, or it is a 10-year term, and will expire on November 6, 2028. And so prior to expiration, the board will need to consider whether or not it will seek the approval from the voters to extend it through a new measure. The collection of this 1 cent sales tax actually began on April 1st of 2019. And due to the litigation, those funds have not been appropriated to date. And so I really want to talk today about what accumulated in past fiscal years, which was from that April 1st, 2019 through June 30th of this year, which would have been the end of our last fiscal year.
Through the chair. One of the things that I wanted to ask is that we're all in consensus, the board, that the original intent of this tax will be followed to the letter.
So we're jumping ahead to my future slides here, Supervisor
I
Vasquez.
understand, but I just, I just wanted to make sure that the board still agreed that we would provide a secure local revenue stream of the county and shall be used entirely to maintain and improve public safety.
So I definitely appreciate the comment, Supervisor Vasquez, and actually I'm going to recite that same section of Measure K here in just a second on a future slide. You kind of stole my thunder, but anyways, but that is something that the board needs to discuss today. The importance, though, I do want to make sure it's clear to the board, and County Council can help with the clarification if needed. But this is a general tax, and so the board needs to exercise discretion when considering how to distribute the funds. It cannot be viewed as a special tax for a very specific purpose, because that would have been under a different threshold that the voters would have needed to approve.
Well put.
Okay. Thank you, Council. So today I want to talk about the background of Measure K, the funds that accumulated in previous fiscal years, and then the funds we anticipate collecting in the current fiscal year, which is estimated at $6 million in the current fiscal year. Okay, so Measure K, when the voters approved Measure K, it also established a new chapter in the county's ordinance code. And as Supervisor Vasquez actually just read an excerpt from the use of the funds, provide a secure local revenue stream to the county that shall be used entirely to maintain and improve public safety services and essential services for the benefit of the unincorporated areas of the county. So just wanted to, that's front and center as the board, through its discretion, decides how best to use these funds in accordance with Chapter 5.60. And I believe this is what Supervisor Vasquez was mentioning. The staff made a presentation to the Board of Supervisors in September of 2018, prior to the voters approving the measure, outlined, and this was basically to help create conceptually what a distribution could look like under this measure. And that concept that the staff provided to the board in September of 2018 outlined that the county could share a portion of the revenues with fire services and then figure out how to appropriately distribute for county services to meet those goals of public safety and essential services. And the formula that was outlined in September of 2018 was that 20% of the total revenue coming in would be distributed to the 9 fire districts that provide fire services in the unincorporated areas, and that 80% would be retained for county provided services. Again, I guess I can't emphasize it enough because we don't want to end back up in court. It's general tax based on Chapter 5.60. County Council maybe put that extra bullet point in it.
Can I interrupt, jumping to a future slide? Were there ever any other plans that were ever presented besides this particular plan that might have caused some confusion in the public side?
No, I believe this was the one specific presentation to the board.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I guess before I jump to the meat of it, for this current fiscal year, what staff is recommending to the board to consider is that we continue with the concept that was presented in 2018, that 80% of the revenue is used for county provided services and 20% is distributed to the fire districts. And so my next slide would kind of outline that breakdown and then a further breakdown for county services. So this is using $6 million as an example. That's our estimated revenue for the current fiscal year. If 20% of that revenue was dedicated to those 9 fire districts, that would represent $1.2 million that would be provided to those 9 fire districts. We would then need to enter into agreements with each of those districts on their appropriate percentage of that 20%, which I'm currently working with the fire districts on what that formula would look like. And then the remaining 80% would be split 75% to public safety, 25% to essential services. What this means in total is what's shown in this pie chart here. So for the total revenue, 20% would be for fire, 60% would be for public safety services provided by the county. And our definition, although public safety, there's kind of budgeting definitions that there's an outline of all sorts of different. For this discussion, the 60% would be focused to 3 departments. It would be to the Sheriff's Department, District Attorney's Office, and the probation department. And then the 20% of the total would be distributed to other county services that would be deemed essential services by the board. And so this is, I'm going to move on from here, but we're trying, for this year, this is what staff is recommending as far as the split. And so this next slide, I'm actually going to ask, I believe, oh, I have one more slide before I have some additional presenters come up. So to further break down that 60% to public safety, that $3.6 million, the sheriff, district attorney, chief probation officer have been working diligently on a plan on how best to maximize public safety services with the funds available, how they can enhance their existing services. And so they've cooperatively worked together, which is great. Yuba County has kind of that spirit of cooperation that doesn't happen in all jurisdictions. And so you have these three departments working together to figure out how they can come up with how to best serve the public. And this pie chart represents what their recommendation is as far as their share of that 60%, where you'd have 71% going to the sheriff's department. The sheriff is going to come up and explain with that $2.5 million what his department could deliver in additional services this fiscal year, and 11% to the district attorney's office and 18% to the probation department. And so I believe, Sheriff, you're up first, and all right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Sheriff Wendell Anderson, and it's truly an exciting day for me. You know, it's been a long journey, and I think we're in a position now to truly enhance public safety in Yuba County. And so based on the numbers that we were given, we've identified staff that we would address and prioritize to enhance public safety through the Sheriff's Department. And just keep in mind, this also includes animal care services, our jail, our court security, and our patrol deputies. We've identified approximately 25 new staff that we could hire and put out on the streets in many cases in this. And the bulk of that being deputy sheriffs, which means increased patrols out in specific areas. We would be able to address the foothills with additional deputies, as well as Plumas Lake. And I know Plumas Lake is growing and it's growing quickly. And in order to maintain a level of safety that our constituents deserve, we need to address our staffing down there, and in the hopes that we would be able to provide 24/7 coverage in the Plumas Lake area. Expanding Valley coverage goes without saying. 13 additional deputies puts us at a number that we've never seen in Yuba County, and that we would never have been able to do had it not been for Measure K. The correctional staff as well would be addressed. We would add additional 6 correctional officers, and that would allow us to do rehabilitation, to work on recidivism, enhanced programming in the jail. And, you know, I think it will come full circle. It'll take time, but addressing those needs in the jail is something that we would never have been able to do, you know, otherwise. We've, since the Measure K passed in 2018, we've actually made some headway on some things. So school resource officer, we have in our high schools now, we haven't had in many, many years, and this will allow us to sustain that outside of our normal patrol deputies. Net 5 we've addressed, as you may not be aware, some of you are. For a time, we had no one in Net 5, and in the last couple of years, we've been able to address Net 5, and what a huge benefit that has been to us, being back in the illegal drugs in Yuba County. We need more, but we've been able to address that, and with Measure K, we will be able to address that with an additional body to Net 5. And I already talked about the Valley Patrol coverage. Programming in the jail is something that is essential. Recidivism is something that, it's impacting us here in our county, and clearly what we've been doing in the past just isn't working. So I think that programming, substance abuse treatment, all of those things we'll be able to address with additional staffing in the jail. Getting back to community oriented policing is something that I've strived to do for since I've taken office 3 years ago. And once we have our staff hired, which is going to be another challenge, we will be able to address that, and we will be able to do true community oriented policing, which is the goal. So I know there's a lot more to it. You can see the numbers, and I can go over specific staff if you have questions as to what the allocations would be potentially. But we're trying to prioritize and truly enhance public safety, which is what Measure K was about, that and essential services. So I'm sure you have questions, and I'll stay up here as long as you'd like to answer them.
I did have a question. Did the allocation, as far as the funding went, did you feel that was what was promised with Measure K and that your department got the amounts that we're supposed to get?
Absolutely. Yeah. I was a part of the campaign for Measure K, as you probably all know. And I feel that the proposal that is before you is exactly what was promised to the public. And I think it's important that we maintain that promise to the public.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for the sheriff?
I think he has answered all my questions. So.
All right. Yes, I was going to say the presentation, we also have probation and district attorney that will provide their specifics, and then I have some additional slides. But if there's any questions specific for the sheriff, it's a good opportunity.
As far as the sheriff's department, does Wheatland or Marysville see any kind of spillover effect from this?
No.
Well, so I would say, they obviously they have their own public safety, but we do absolutely, without a doubt, we help Wheatland when they need help. We help Marysville when they need help. We're not going to have dedicated patrols in those areas, but more staffing available to us means more staffing available to help those public safety departments as well. So it'll definitely have an impact on both. And, it'll be a positive thing for Marysville and for Wheatland as well. Having the number of deputies on the street that we'll be able to have will help the entire county. Thank you very much.
Through the chair, just a comment, Sheriff. I don't have any questions. I have complete faith in your ability to run your department. So I'll have some comments when we get to a point of wrap up, but I think you have a great plan and I think you're on the right target. So thank you.
Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
All right. Jim?
So good morning, Chair, board members. I think the first comment I really want to make is thank all the people that put a lot of effort in passing Measure K. It's been a long journey. There's a lot of work still to be done. Thank you to the Yuba County citizens as well. With our Measure K funding, we'll be able to add 1 deputy probation officer, 1 substance abuse counselor, 2 intervention counselors, probation aide, $168,000 enhanced mental health services at our juvenile hall and camp singer programs, excuse me, and miscellaneous funds to enhance our team center programming and vocational instruction. This will provide more intense supervision to some of the most vulnerable 18 to 25-year-old population. It increases services to our victims, which creates healthier and a safer community, provides more opportunity and continuous drug and alcohol services for our high-risk clients, allows incarcerated adults an opportunity to tackle barriers before their release, which will increase their opportunity for success upon release, allows for more critical mental health services to our incarcerated youth, which sets them up for higher success upon their release from juvenile hall and camp singer. Overall, the funding frees up, this will free up funding so we can use it towards other client services such as more intense homeless management, starts to bring service levels back to where they were in 2009. For the first time in many years, we can really focus on prevention and intervention with these new positions and funding. But most importantly, these new positions and additional funds meet community needs, they're data-driven, and they're client-focused. Any questions?
Do you have questions?
Through the chair, you're going to make these slides available to us when we talk to the public on what they're getting for their dollar. I think it's important that we let them know that we're sticking to the spirit of the intent of that tax, and we're following through. It was, that last budget committee meeting was painful. So thank you for your patience waiting.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? No. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, last but not least, District Attorney.
Thanks, Kevin. Clint Curry, District Attorney, and I'm excited too. I mean, this is just, 1990, staffing in the DA's office was 13. And when I took over in the DA's office just a few years ago, it was 13. So, 40% increase in population in the county and flat as far as staffing within the DA's office. Of course, it wasn't flat the whole time. Right before the Great Recession, it was 20. With Measure K, this is a solid investment in public safety and in the DA's office specifically. We're going to be able to hire 2 attorneys. And I'm really excited about what we're going to be able to do with that as far as creating some specific assignments. One, and again, when I talk about an assignment, by increasing staff, we're going to be able to reduce caseload for a senior violent felony prosecutor. So we'll reduce their caseload so they can hit home runs all day long. That's the idea behind that. And then on the other end, a restorative justice prosecution assignment. Again, reduce caseload and allow them to focus on this area. And of course, those are words. What are you talking about, Clint? So one, really focused on the serious and the violent, and honestly, like for most of them, sending them to prison, getting them off our streets so they can't harm our Yuba County residents. The other end of that is working on root causes and identifying, like mental health, behavioral health type stuff, veterans issues, drug addiction. Like how do we fix the amenable, those who are amenable to probation? How do we help them break the cycle? So, there's a big debate in criminal justice across our country right now, and some, lean toward the traditional, we just put everyone in prison, and some are like, no, let's not put anyone in prison anymore. Well, here in Yuba County, common sense rules. Roots, attacking the roots that cause criminality makes sense, and so does incarcerating some people that can't get with the program. So that's the intent behind the share that would go to the DA's office, is 2 attorneys to really tease those 2 areas out, and I'm super excited about that. Any questions specific to the DA's office?
Well, I just hope you give us some information that we can take, because we're going to be hitting the streets and talking to people about what this really means for their safety. And you see things happening in New York, Chicago, and all over. It should not happen here, and we have to inform our public that we're not going to tolerate it.
No, absolutely. And I know the 3 of us individually as departments are working on specific deliverables to be able to talk and track about, and so when we do go back to the community, if you choose to ask for a renewal of Measure K, we'll be able to tell you exactly where that money went and how it impacted public safety in our community.
Thank you very much for your patience waiting. Kind of hard to believe you have 13 people.
Well, we've always been conservative in Yuba County financially, and that's a good thing. But
we've done so much with so little so often, we can pretty much do anything with nothing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Clint.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Just a quick comment for the 3 of you. I can't tell you how pleased I am that the fact that 3 of you work so well together. I think we've all said as a board in front of you each year to talk about what you didn't have, that what you needed, and what the public was able to give you to enhance safety in their community is priceless. Their support, and you're willing to work together as a team to accomplish that in each of your different departments. And I think it'll all pay off in the long run. So again, I applaud what you've done. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fletcher. So if the board will bear with me, I've got a few more slides, then we can have a discussion. So as was outlined in that previous pie chart, 1.2 million to the fire districts, 3.6 million to the 3 departments, and they just outlined for the current fiscal year. And then it would leave 1.2 million available for the board's discretion on what's most appropriate to invest in as far as county services that we would consider essential services. So these are recommendations from staff and the board. Ultimately, it's your discretion on whether these make sense or there needs to be additions or subtractions to this list. But what's being recommended is that we kind of double down on our code enforcement activities for the public, and that would include the funding of 2 deputies that are to partner with the code enforcement on activities, and then invest in additional abatement activities. That's a limiting factor a lot of times with code enforcement, where they don't have the hammer because they don't have the funds to actually clean up a property. And so this would be making an investment in additional abatement activities. In the building department, funding a fire prevention officer position. This is a new position that was created that we'd like to get going on, and frankly it may grow as grants become available, but really focus on our fire prevention efforts here in Yuba County. And tying to both fire and then also code enforcement to a certain extent, or I should just say cleanup in general, additional funds to public works to focus on vegetation management along our roadsides to keep those sparks that are on the road from igniting fires and running off, and then also the cleanup of trash and debris that the public commonly complains about, and we want to keep our roadways clean. And then these next 2 are both support roles that are internal, but it's really to support these additional public safety services. Like, for example, so one's an additional position in human resources and the other is an additional position in county council. I'll give you an example. The sheriff just talked about wanting to hire 25 people. Human resources is already kind of at limit right now. And then now you have, you're trying to figure out how do you pull in an additional, that's just the sheriff's department, an additional 25 people. We need some additional resources in human resources there to focus on assisting the public safety departments with that hiring. And then county council, county council's office is kind of at the limit right now. And this will definitely, we'll have it, with increased activities, it becomes unfortunately a need for increased legal consultation with county council. And so those are 2 positions that I'm recommending to the board. I think they're kind of vital to behind the scenes, keeping things moving forward. And then in my office, we've created a director of business development. That position, the water agency has pledged half of the funding. So this would be to match that with the other half of the funding. And really this position, an economic development focused position, is something that, frankly, talking forward to November of 2028 and whether or not we need to consider an additional 1% sales tax, some of this will depend on our economic development efforts between now and then, on how successful the county is between now and 2028, and whether there really is a need for the additional 1% sales tax in order to sustain the additional services, or whether we've done a good enough job of bringing in additional economic development to sustain the services. And so that's kind of an investment for the future there. And then for our responses and for emergency services, I'm recommending an additional OES planner. We have one. I recommend adding a second planner. There's an overwhelming amount of need on the OES side of things, and frankly, our OES folks are also the ones that time permitting, are looking for grant opportunities to pull in to help our public safety departments enhance their services. And so having that resource in OES, I think, will help us also bring in some additional outside funds. And so those are our recommendations there. I'm going to run through the rest of the slides, and then we can have kind of a discussion about this, as well as other items that that I want to discuss with the board today related to Measure K. The next item has to do with the 14. It's actually 14 plus million, 14 and change that the county received from the April of 2019 through June 30th of this year, and this is a staff recommendation on how to appropriate some of the funds. And I'm gonna walk through each one of those bullet points. And this is kind of a summary. And if the board is and this will be part of our future discussion, amenable to these in concept, then we'll come back with specifics that can be actionable at a future board meeting. The first would be similar to the set aside that we're recommending for the current fiscal year as far as a percentage. The 20% of the funds that accumulated in the past fiscal years be set aside and be used and be distributed to the 9 fire districts providing fire services in the unincorporated areas of the county. And then one-time county expenses. This is something where I had in my office, Grace Mole and Michelle Logan, our management analysts, the ones that help prepare our budgets each year, go through and take a look at during this time period, one-time projects that were public safety projects that the county expended funds on that we would have, if we would have had Measure K available, we could have had that opportunity to use Measure K funds. We didn't have the Measure K funds available due to litigation. And so this would be reimbursing those county funding sources that had to kind of pony up with the Measure K not available. So just to kind of give an example, we had multiple projects in the jail that occurred during that time frame, and there was a $542,000 project, $175,000 project in the jail, just on and on that unfortunately, and they were necessary, but we didn't have other funds available. So that would be a recommendation is going through an exercise to reimburse those county funds with the Measure K funds during that time frame. And that, if we take that item, that would be something we could go over the specific projects that would be reimbursed and the accounts that it would go into in the future. And then for the current fiscal year, we took a look at, because we prepared the current fiscal year budget not knowing whether or not the Measure K funds were going to be available. And so there was actually about $1 million in public safety one-time expenses that we used essentially general fund to cover that because the Measure K funds were not available. So to give some examples on that, see under the one-time expenses here, yep, like the CAD system and the Sheriff's Department, we're taking a look at doing an upgrade there. Let's see here. What else do we have on here? More jail-related expenses, some vehicles that the sheriff needed, et cetera. So anyways, that just kind of gives you a little context for what's in that $1 million. This next item, this was a loan that the water agency, that the sheriff that was made by the water agency to cover the expenses associated with the new sheriff's administrative building on Yuba Street. And so just to kind of understand why this is being recommended. So the loan, it has annual payments the sheriff makes out of their budget. And those payments, if we don't pay off the loan early, would continue on till 2031. And there's still about $550,000 in interest that would need to be paid on that loan as well. We've reached out to the water agency. They're more than amenable to allowing us to just pay it off early and avoid that $550,000 in interest. And what that does for the Sheriff's Department is it frees up that annual debt service payment that they had to make out of their budget for that loan. And instead they can reinvest that into additional services to the public. And then this is just the basic math, but if the board is so inclined to appropriate the 2.8, the 5, the 1, and the 3.5, that would still leave 1.7 million sitting in that bank of funds from previous fiscal years that would be unappropriated at this time. So let's see here. Another item that was contained in Chapter 5.60 of the Ordinance Code, and it was something that was very important back to accountability, was making sure that the public knew how these funds were being appropriated and spent. And so in that chapter is a Citizens Oversight Committee, and this would be the committee would be appointees of the Board of Supervisors. The appointees would need to be residents of the unincorporated area of the county. It's not district specific. It would be 5 at-large members, but all need to be residents of Yuba County in the unincorporated area. And this committee would be tasked with presenting an annual audit report to the Board of Supervisors on the use of the Measure K funds. And the way it's outlined in the ordinance is that audit report is due within 90 days of the end of a fiscal year. And so since this will be the first fiscal year that funds will be used, then that deadline would be September 30th of 2022. And what I would recommend to the board on this item is that currently there are no appointees to that oversight committee, to solicit for interest in that committee and appoint 5 members so that we can begin kind of preparing for this report on the use of funds. All right, so in summary, and this is for our discussion today is what I'm soliciting from the board is some direction and feedback on appropriating that's the estimated $6 million in the current fiscal year, determination on how best to distribute the 14 million that accumulated in past fiscal years, and then the oversight committee direction on whether or not to move forward with that at this time. And with that,
Through the chair, if you can go back 4 slides.
yes. This slide or the?
So this slide's fine. So the 5th and 6th bullet, can you give me for county council perhaps some examples of essential services that the council will be able to provide or that they are currently providing, so I can see the essential services link?
Oh, absolutely. That position, what we're looking at is dedicating it to sheriff, probation, district attorney, and public safety related matters. So it might even involve fire districts if an issue came up. But that position would be dedicated. It is time studied. So at the end of the year, the oversight committee would be provided with basically the timesheet showing that the time was dedicated to those departments and public safety related items. Now the description won't be, that's attorney-client privilege, attorney work product, but it will show the date, the department, and the amount of time expended so that the oversight committee can see that we are dedicating that deputy to those positions. And by way of example, some of the things we deal with is personnel related matters for the sheriff's department, district attorney, or probation. Our office is involved, as we often preach, and we work with HR hand in hand. The earlier the better when we have issues come up. We also handle a multitude of Public Record Act requests, which, as you can see, the legislature has really directed an assault on peace officer personnel records, which previously were confidential and required a motion to the court to get. The legislature has changed that, and we are seeing, as a result of that, increasing numbers of Public Record Act requests. We have a very large Public Record Act request right now for the district attorney's office, and that requires our office to go through redact, do things of that nature. So those those are some of the big ticket items. We're also involved in when projects come forward, such as the jail annex, the jail expansion. Our office is involved. We were involved with negotiating with the Judicial Council because, as you know, the court is right there. So we had to get some reprieves from Judicial Council. So it's a lot of things that you won't see publicly, like deputies on the street, but the Deputy County Council will be dedicated to that, and also to the jail. I can say on almost a daily basis, we are responding to class counsel who monitors our compliance with the amended consent decree. It is our hope that by increasing our responsiveness, we will be able to, at the end of that, let's see, January 2023 is the 4th year of the amended consent decree. And we are hopeful that we can either bring it to a close or narrow the scope of it. And this position will assist with that, because it is quite onerous at times. A good example is when we had COVID in the jail. And I know myself and my chief deputy worked through the holidays every day because we had to be responding to class counsel who was saying, this person isn't getting that, that person isn't getting this. So that would be the purpose of this position.
Thank you. And then on the next bullet, I think it's great to have a business development, economic development outreach. That's good stuff. How do we link that to essential services?
Again, the board has full discretion on determining what is an essential service.
Yeah, and I'll jump in on that one again also, because I thought that might raise some eyebrows. But when you look at Measure K and materials that were used in the promotion or distribution of information regarding Measure K, one of the components was economic development. And that was in Measure K. The Court of Appeal, the 3rd District Court of Appeal, noted that and said, look, the county from the beginning was saying economic development is also a proper use for Measure K funds. And that went into the Court of Appeal's decision when they were determining this was a general tax. It wasn't specifically limited to only sheriff, only fire, only probation, only DA. It enumerated other uses as well, and economic development was one of them.
So the particular clause that Mr. Vasquez read and that you repeated made it sound superficially like it was this, but because of the way the court ruled, economic services would be included.
So the court's ruling relied on documentation that was within Measure K that mentioned economic development.
Okay. On the next slide, for just clarity, because again, superficial readings can lead to misunderstandings. On the 2nd and 3rd bullet, I would recommend just putting public safety, because it seemed to some people that it was just county expenses over and over again. And so if you put in on the 2nd and 3rd bullet, public safety on both of those, I think that would help with the communication.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, for the clarification, because those are public safety one-time expenses.
Exactly, and that's the friction.
Sure. Go back one slide, if you would. Item 6. I think that I'd like to have an ad hoc committee made for 2 items. One item being the item 6, bullet 6, Director of Business Development and Additional Economic Development Outreach, because we work together so well with so many different departments. We've got a strategic plan for economic growth, and I think that the ad hoc committee can bring this out to where it fits within that realm, and see whether we need a director. But I'd like to be in an ad hoc committee, and also our Citizens Oversight Committee. I would like to see in that same ad hoc look to providing compensation for the Oversight Committee as a grand jury amount, the way grand jury is done. And I don't know if anyone would care to join. I would like to be on it, but is it something that,
I would certainly volunteer as a second ad hoc if that's appropriate.
you know, I think that you and I think along the same lines, and I don't see any reason to reinvest as much money as we put in this for something that we can add to and enjoy the benefit of all the past efforts.
So I have no problem appointing said ad hoc committee, but I just want to understand the scope of the ad hoc committee clearly. If I understand, there are not concerns with item 6 or moving forward, which would actually come back officially, I guess, at another meeting. But really, the desire is for the ad hoc committee to see, to ensure that item 6 takes into account the work done by the water agency and make sure that, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're working together with the water agency on that item. Is that a correct understanding?
That's correct.
Okay. And then I do have just personally, I have one concern about providing, and legal counsel may have other concerns, but and the ad hoc committee can talk about this. I think that's great to hash it out. But I just wanted to share, I do have concern about paying the members of the Oversight Committee. I have a feeling that the public might look at that and say the county's giving them money, so therefore they will be less honest and less truthful about how the money is being spent with respect to Measure K. And so again, I think that's something that the ad hoc committee can talk about, but that is a concern that came to my mind as soon as I heard that. Not that I want their, I understand their time, but.
The ad hoc committee will bring that in discussion and go that. But I think that showing that we don't need to duplicate efforts and we can provide something that happens now, and we don't have to hold up any of the fund distribution at all. And we can do that in the ad hoc committee. So
okay, so I'll appoint Supervisor Vasquez and Supervisor Fletcher to that ad hoc committee.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I just took a quick look at Chapter 5.60 when that discussion was going on, and it didn't specifically call out compensation to the committee members, but council and I can obviously work with the ad hoc committee on is there an appropriate stipend or something to cover costs associated with participating on the committee.
Absolutely.
So as part, and maybe this is the pie chart is the simplest, but for the current fiscal year, it is getting a direction from the board on the percentages really helps staff in putting together a follow-up item on back to amending position allocations to specific departments and budgets, et cetera. And so having some direction from the board on whether these percentages recommended for the current fiscal year makes sense. Would be helpful.
Comments from the board?
Do we need a consent? Just want a consensus, or do you need
I think it's just consensus is what we're looking for, right?
The agenda item as written does say take action as appropriate. So if the board is inclined to proceed by motion, the agenda item certainly would provide for that.
Okay. I have no problem proceeding by motion. So
okay, I'll make the motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have a first from Supervisor Vasquez, a second from Supervisor Fletcher. Since there is a motion, I will ask for any public comment, and the public comment that I'm asking for at this time is specifically related to this broad allocation of funding in the current fiscal year. So any public comment in the room? I can't see Zoom, so Rochelle, if you let me know if there's any public comment on Zoom.
I need to open something up here.
There are no raised hands.
Okay, seeing no public comment, I will ask for a roll call vote.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
With the comment that there was no other plans or allocations put forward as stated. And with Wendell Anderson's endorsement, this is exactly what was promoted and asked for and is being received. I also vote yes.
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford, Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Thank you. It's unanimous.
Great, thank you.
All right, so maybe the other item to tackle would be on the one-time money, some direction from the board on what you would like staff to do with bringing back item or items related to the one-time funding. And this could be two parts too. So the recommendation would be to consistent with the current fiscal year, set 20% aside for the fire districts, 80% for the county one-time expenses.
Again, you're looking for a motion.
Yes, I will be looking for a motion.
And this is the 5 million in expenses that paid for other sources while the funds were tied up. So
I think it's for the entire 14 million listed on the screen. That the motion would be that staff brings back the specifics of those individual items for us to consider the actual allocation of funds, but that we are essentially saying we're okay with this in concept. Please bring back the specifics.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any additional board comment on this item?
Yes, on the 1.7 million, the last bullet, again, just for communication and clarity with the public, if as many of those things that you have in that category link obviously to essential, that would be great, because whenever it's more tenuous or indirect or obfuscated, then that creates friction.
I think that's a good addition. It's been talked about real frequently.
Any public comments on this particular item? Okay, I do not see any in the room. Rochelle, are there any on Zoom?
No.
Okay, seeing no public comment, roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Thank you. It's unanimous.
You got this.
All right, and so the final item, and based on the formation of the ad hoc committee, I guess we could discuss whether or not you would like to have the ad hoc committee bring back recommendations to the full board before proceeding with soliciting for the 5 open positions.
Would the board like to start soliciting for the positions even while the question of compensation is outstanding, or do we wish to hold off until that question is settled and then solicit applications?
Well, I'd like to get it started as soon as possible.
I also like to start soliciting as soon as possible.
I think that makes sense. I'd get that information out as quickly as possible.
Okay, I agree as well. So I guess, you know, we took motions for the other one, so I think just for consistency, maybe we should take a motion for this one too.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Supervisor Fletcher, sorry, Supervisor Vasquez and then Supervisor Fletcher. Any public comment from the room? Okay. Any public comment from Zoom? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Thank you. It's unanimous.
Great.
All right, well, thank you, board. That item, I might have underestimated the 20 minutes. Apologize for that.
Just a small wee bit.
And I know that the next item is mine as well, but I guess it'd be through the chair whether or not a break is needed. We're 2 hours in, or would you like me to proceed?
We could, okay, looks like
Looks
we're interested in moving on. So we can proceed. I just, not to take too long, but I just want to thank staff for all their work on that. It's been a long time coming. I thank Supervisor Fuhrer for his questions today. I think they were excellent. I think they went a long way towards reassuring the public. And I really appreciated the question that he asked of the sheriff and the sheriff's response. You know, and that's absolutely how I see this as well. I was very active in the Measure K campaign because I believe that you know, this additional revenue is important for our residents, and I believe that the proposal that was before the board today aligns with not only the measure, but what we shared with the public in 2018 was our intention of how to spend that money. And so thank you. I know the board directed staff to bring before us something that aligned with obviously the legality of the measure, but also what we had told the public. And I think that's exactly what happened. So thank you. Okay, so next up is item 537, 2021, County Administrator, adopt resolution approving the proposed Regional Waste Management Authority Fourth Amendment and restated Joint Powers Agreement and Regional Waste Management Authority amended Regional Agency Formation Agreement and authorize the County Administrator to execute.
Yes. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Kevin Mallon. So this item, I think I had a 10-minute estimate. I'm hoping that it will be less than that. But I will give you the Cliff Notes version because essentially solid waste management is something that the 6 jurisdictions within Yuba and Sutter counties agreed to work on collectively dating back 3 decades. And what's happened over this past 3 decades is management of solid waste has become increasingly complicated. The state loves to, there's a new law every year, it feels like. And it's gotten to the point where the recommendation is that we kind of beef up the joint powers agreement that the 6 jurisdictions have had in place for the last 3 decades and delegate more authority and focus to this Regional Waste Management Authority, and also that the Regional Waste Management Authority hire a focused executive director in this area. Keith Martin has done an excellent job. He's in the audience today, wearing 2 hats as both the executive director for this entity, as well as overseeing Yuba-Sutter Transit. Keith, am I stealing your thunder, Keith? Keith is not. He's been here a long time, and I think it's near the end. And this is part of finding an appropriate succession plan for Keith as well. And so before you today is a number of amendments to that JPA that all of the jurisdictions have been working on with Keith and his consultants that would be the most appropriate path forward for our 6 jurisdictions to manage solid waste into the future. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions or comments from the board?
I move to adopt.
Okay, I have a first.
Just a quick comment before I second that. Built into this, of course, is a modification on rates that will affect primarily the upper foothills. But I think it's critical that you keep up with the pace of life in general and the expenses. Nobody likes rate increases and nobody wants to pay more, but the fact is it requires more funds to operate facilities. And I think I heard that from Keith somewhere along the line over the last 7 years. So I will second that.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any public comment on this item? Do not see any in the room. I do not see any on Zoom. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez.
I would not like to have your gas bill, Keith. That's a yes for me.
Supervisor Blazer.
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford.
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous.
Great, thank you. Next, moving on to item 530, 2021, County Administrator, authorize creation of an agency enhancement grant program administered by the Yuba-Sutter Food Bank, providing sub-recipient grants to local food pantries, live-in facilities, and soup kitchens in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Adopt resolution authorizing the county administrator to enter into an agreement with the Yuba-Sutter Food Bank to administer sub-recipient grants not to exceed $25,000.
Through the chair, you've received an additional material item on this item showing
Speak in the microphone, I can't hear you.
It was not included when the agenda originally went out, but was subsequently added. So it would not be in your paper packet.
Supervisor Vasquez, attachment A is an additional item related to this agenda.
All right.
Absolutely.
Good morning, Chairman Bradford and members of the board. Rachel Downs, Project Manager from Community Development. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I will be brief as well, just in the interest of time. I also want to mention I have Michelle Downing on Zoom with us today to answer any additional questions or provide additional information about this program. So we have the opportunity to come before you today to speak about an agency enhancement grant program enabling the food bank to provide sub-recipient grants to nonprofit food pantries, live-in facilities, and soup kitchens that serve Yuba County residents. This will enable them to make up for lost revenue during the COVID-19 climate, mostly due to an inability to fundraise, increase their capacity, or make capital expansion improvements. I want to start actually by sharing a letter received by our Foothill Food Pantry from their director, Lisa Baker, just to paint the picture of the community need in our community need. And then her letter really kind of helped inspire this program as well. So the letter was originally addressed to Supervisor Fletcher. It says, as you know, our volunteer-based nonprofit organization provides supplemental food boxes to Foothill residents. The need for our program very much continues, particularly since the advent of COVID-related issues. While there were some monetary aid through COVID funding, our donations and fundraising abilities still suffered. I'm hoping there is some way you can help. I'm seeking or asking for approximately $5,000 to be used toward pantry operations, such as insurance and supplies. This amount will help tremendously. Lisa also shared that the latest statistics from the Foothill Food Pantry for the fiscal year of October 1, 2019 through September 30th of 2020 were, this is really impressive, and it's probably one of the most exciting things to share, is they distributed over 4,100 boxes of food. People helped were over 12,000. And on a side note, since they started gathering statistics in 2017, the number of boxes distributed in 2017 through 2020 is over 15,000, with 45,000 people helped. That is incredibly impressive. I did have a conversation with Lisa yesterday, who wasn't able to join us in person today. She might still be on the phone with us, but they were actually getting set up for a food distribution this morning and weren't able to join us. So I just wanted to thank her so much for their invaluable services, and then also make her aware of the potential grant program that may come of this item. So the total amount requested today to initiate this Yuba-Sutter Food Bank Administered Agency Enhancement Grant Program is $25,000. And that would potentially come from the American Rescue Plan Act funding. Sub-recipient grants would range from $500 to $10,000. And the goal of these grants, again, would be to facilitate measurable expansion to improve either the quality or quantity of service. Eligible organizations must be a nonprofit food pantry, soup kitchen, or live-in facility open to the general public and serve Yuba County residents. Allowable usages would include things like equipment, shelving, refrigerators, insulated blankets for the food, facility improvements, technology, training expenses, and again, replacement of lost revenue due to a reduced ability to fundraise during COVID-19. That was part of the attachment A. I apologize for not having that in your original packet. And then the non-allowable usage of funds would be things like vehicles, food and beverage, or staff time and overhead. And lastly, just in conclusion, we ask that your board make a finding of public purpose and authorize the county administrator to sign any required documents to enter into a funding agreement with the Yuba-Sutter Food Bank in substantial conformance with this program. And then again, I have Michelle online if there's any other questions for you.
Does the board have any questions or comments?
Through the chair, has she sent any information to the water agency to see if the water agency wants to also participate in something similar to this in the foothills?
No, the request came directly to the county, but we can definitely reach out to the water agency to see if they'd like to assist.
I don't think people understand the level of poverty in certain areas. I spent 4 years in the foothills with a teen center, and you have kids with no clothes, no socks, no underwear in the snow. And I think that the water agency would probably be more than happy to to match those funds. So, yeah, if we could send that information to Terry Daly.
If I could, through the chair, just to kind of follow up on that, the $25,000 is something we worked with the Yuba-Sutter Food Bank on is kind of an initial kind of starting point. And based on demand, if the demand exceeds 25,000, that might be an appropriate time to see if the water agency is willing to help cover that
Just
overflow.
get the information to the water agency. I've been out there before, and have kids sending boxes out, and the kid runs up and says, "Hey, what mommy toilet?" Got a big problem, but they don't. They're top people, they don't ask sometimes. So I'd like to.
Through the chair, a couple of questions on this one. Non-allowable uses of funds under the staff overhead expense. Under overhead is, could you provide a list of that so it's specific rather than discretionary to the interpretation of what's the cost of overhead? Because literally everything is overhead. I would hate to find this being turned down if someone arbitrarily feels it's overhead, therefore they don't qualify, and it's going to create a problem. I think it'd be helpful if you'll define that of specifically what you would like or not authorize, or that we can approve. But somehow I think we need to help establish exactly what is that. The other item under agency must be a nonprofit pantry. So are you saying it must be a 501c3, CB, a 6C? Which ones qualify or not qualify, or are they just nonprofit? Again, the problem you can run into this is the cost of setting up a 501c3 is in some cases prohibitive. One I'm thinking of in Brownsville, I'm not sure, and I don't believe they are a 501c3 yet. There is a nonprofit. It's all donated. They just have never set up because they don't have the funds to set up the 501c3 and then be audited. Once you have the 501c3 at the tune of $1,200 to $25,000, you need to be audited to stay on top of it, of funds they don't have. If you can help identify that, obviously nonprofit is important, but define it would be helpful.
I think we can certainly do that. And I will also lean on Michelle if there's any issues with that on their end. However, I know as far as the county being concerned, the funding source potentially being the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, and it does clearly call out nonprofits. I can certainly commit to, before the funding agreement is executed, reviewing that document to ensure that it doesn't specifically call out any type of nonprofit. I believe it just says nonprofit in general, but we will double check that.
And maybe the way to handle that is you have an umbrella effect that one nonprofit distributes to their potential nonprofits that qualifies for the nonprofit. If you see where I'm headed, I hate to get bogged down in bureaucracy that we can't get it to the public because it's too expensive to set up some of these programs yet. They're all part of the initial nonprofit.
Yeah, from the county perspective, the ARPA funding comes with guidance as to what are allowable costs, what are not allowable costs. They then direct you back to Code of Federal Regulations. And as Rachel pointed out, the guidance also speaks to nonprofit status. So all we have to do is ensure we're in compliance with the federal guidance on the expenditure of these funds. And I have every confidence that staff will interpret that in a manner to maximize the resources to the community.
Perfect.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions from the board? Okay. And I can't remember now if we had a motion or not.
Motion to approve.
Okay. I have a first from Supervisor Fletcher, a second from Supervisor Vasquez. Any public comment? Okay, I don't see any in the room. I do not see any on Zoom. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez?
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer?
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer?
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous.
Great. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle, for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, next we'll move on to item 540, 2021, Community Development and Services receives update on FEMA flood insurance premiums. Morning, Dan.
Good morning, Chairman Bradford, members of the board. Dan Peterson, Director of Public Works. This is an informational item only. It's something I anticipate is going to be hugely controversial, and I expect that board members will be contacted by constituents, so I did not want this to be a surprise to you. Recently, FEMA has enacted a new methodology of establishing flood insurance premiums. The old method relied upon flood insurance rate maps, flood zones established by FEMA, and depth of flooding. The new risk rating 2.0 equity and action methodology no longer considers flood zones, does not require elevation certificates, does not require a base flood elevation. According to the information that I read prior to it coming out, it was supposed to have a relatively nominal impact on most flood insurance premiums. 65–70% of flood premiums in our area were supposed to stay the same. Of the remainder, most of the flood insurance policies were supposed to increase less than $20 per year, and only a small percentage, 7 or 8%, were supposed to increase by more than $20 per year. However, about a week and a half ago, I started getting phone calls from folks saying, "Oh my goodness, do you know what my flood insurance premium is?" So we received a quote for a new residential structure in Plumas Lake, not in a flood zone. The FEMA flood insurance premium for this house that is not in a flood zone is $6,450 per year. Obviously, we thought there was some kind of a mistake. Possibly FEMA's rating system had not recognized a new subdivision, wasn't sure where it was, and this was an error. So we contacted FEMA Region 9, contacted FEMA headquarters, and contacted FEMA underwriting. We received back confirmation that no, this is indeed the correct premium, and this is a fair and equitable premium based upon their new criteria. The new criteria, and I'm just going to read it off so I'll be accurate, considers the replacement cost for the home, regardless of the insurance amount. Construction type, the building square footage, which are reasonable, number of detached structures on the property, even if those structures are not included in the insurance policy for the residents. Properly elevated machinery, equipment, and appliances, even in non-flood zones. The number of floors in the building, foundation type, flood frequency, flooding types, whether it's riverine, which is a river overflow, a storm surge, coastal erosion, or heavy rainfall. The physical distance to a water source, regardless of whether there's a levee between you or not, and any prior claims. So looking at this, I thought, okay, still something has to be wrong here. So I asked our local insurance agents to start sending me quotes that seemed a little odd. Interestingly, I received a quote for a residential structure in a flood zone, same coverage as the home in Plumas Lake that's not in a flood zone. The annual premium for the home in the flood zone was $5,683 per year, which is expensive, but it's still $800 per year cheaper than the flood insurance for the home in Plumas Lake. So based upon, what I've been seeing with these submitted flood premiums, flood insurance premiums, the conclusion is that the existing rates are going to stay the same for renewal policies for the next year. Starting in April of 2022 or somewhere around there, April 1st of 2022, the existing policy rates will start going up 18% per year until they reach these new actuarial rates under risk rating 2.0. Any new policies, such as a new home in a subdivision in Plumas Lake, will automatically be rated at this new risk rating 2.0 premium. What I anticipate seeing then is we're going to have literally hundreds of people contacting us saying what is going on. The silver lining is that there are now a handful of third-party insurance providers. The primary one appears to be Lloyd's of London, that are offering flood insurance at much more reasonable levels. So the one in Plumas Lake received a quote from Lloyd's of London that was in the area of $700 per year. So prediction number one is that most people will start shifting over to third-party insurance covers. My second prediction is that people who are not required to have mandatory flood insurance are simply not going to have flood insurance any longer, which is contrary to the message that we've been trying to get at, that if you're protected by a levee, you should still, be covered under flood insurance. And flood insurance has been historically rather reasonably priced, so it makes financial sense to do so. But at $5,000 or $6,000 per year, that financial decision becomes, slightly different. My third prediction is that FEMA is trying to use this as a means of getting out of the flood insurance business, and eventually they'll just simply quit providing flood insurance to anybody. So at any rate, that is the message I wanted to present to you today. Is this is happening. It's not an error, and we're going to, I'm expecting, start receiving many, many phone calls and inquiries about flood insurance premiums. Any questions?
Only a few. Have you made contact with the local West Coast division? I believe it's Edie out of Oakland to talk about this particular issue.
Yes, and Edie was the one who provided me the contact information for FEMA underwriting. I was actually provided two contacts, one which I could use as a member of the public, and then one for elected officials. And Supervisor Bradford was kind enough to send an email as a elected official, and he received the same response I did.
That said what?
That said that the new FEMA Risk Rating 2.0 methodology is accurate, and it is far more equitable, and it is going to be based upon the criteria that I read to you.
Through the chair, are we providing information where the third-party insurers can be reached? Lloyd's of London.
FEMA flood insurance can be purchased through any insurance provider. So a homeowner can go through the regular insurance agent who will then facilitate the FEMA flood insurance. And I'm assuming that most of the insurance agents speak to one another, and they are fully aware of these third-party providers. If not, I am more than happy to reach out to the insurance industry as a whole, as a group, and make sure that everybody is on the same page and is aware of what the resources are out there.
Okay, is there anything written you can give me that explains this to the homeowner, that these changes are happening right now? Don't be surprised.
Unfortunately, what's in writing out there, available off of FEMA's websites, pretty much equates to propaganda, and it makes it appear as if these are not going to be major impacts to folks. I would be happy to provide like a one-page summary of what we're seeing happening.
That would be greatly appreciated, because I think we're going to get a few phone calls. I would hope so.
So one of the advantages of being a member of NACO is we have the opportunity to talk on a much larger scale. And fortunately, we have a meeting starting tomorrow in Salt Lake City. And both Gary and I will be attending that meeting and have that opportunity to take it to a little bit higher level to see what kind of information we can receive. Once upon a time, FEMA actually put on meetings to the benefit of agents and government officials throughout the nation. They quit doing that about 12 years ago and said, not necessary, we'll just do it on our own. But certainly we can bring this to the table, and will be bringing it. So thank you for the update.
I feel like propaganda might be a good choice of words. I know when I first learned of this, I went to a website, I think it was FEMA's website, and they had a map by zip code of anticipated premium increases or decreases based on the new methodology. And I did look up the zip code that Plumas Lake is in, and I don't remember exactly what that number was, but it may have been an increase of about 18%. And now in hindsight, it seems like maybe that was just, they were representing the year one increase, and certainly were not disclosing what the full increase would be. And so, you know, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but as you said, no one will get flood insurance. You know, I think it's hard enough for people to get flood insurance at the $500 to $600 rate, which is, I think, kind of, you know, goes up a little every year, but I think that's kind of the current range. And then, you know, also, you know, to some extent, I think communities might begin to wonder what's the point of levee improvements. You know, I think there's the public safety aspect of that. And I know here in Yuba County, we would continue to do that purely for public safety reasons. But other communities, you know, they might also look to upgrade levees, because if you're not behind a certified levee, then right, you have mandatory flood insurance and building restrictions. And it seems to me that if you're not going to care that there's a levee there or not with respect to flood insurance, what happens to the other part of that program, right? Then why care if people are developing in those areas or not? And, you know, why worry about upgrading your levees if, you know, the end result is going to be a $6,000 premium for flood insurance? So again, those are not directed to you. They're really directed to FEMA. And you know, but I just worry about all of the implications of this, you know, from you know, the levee construction, housing construction, and, you know, when there is a flood, no one having flood insurance, because why would I at $6,000? I mean, that's just unreasonable. And like you said, you know, you go to a private insurer and, you know, you can get it at what's a more reasonable rate. And I know it should be based on actual risk. And, you know, as we've seen in the foothills, you know, situations where, you know, fire insurance risk is high and rates have become extraordinary. And I'm sure the same thing's happening there too, right? Is that it gets beyond the affordability for someone that they make a conscious choice to not have insurance. And that would certainly be happening. So anyway, I'll quit rambling on about that and see if there's any other comments.
I'm just startled that a government agency could be guilty of propaganda. I wondered suddenly how widespread that might be. Could it be more than one? What sort of propaganda could they be engaged?
To the chair, actually, you've made a number of good points. FEMA, the flood insurance program, the National Flood Insurance Program, is really a triangle. It's got three sides to it. The side number one is floodplain management, controlling and regulating development in a floodplain. Side number two is floodplain mapping. Side number three is flood insurance. And all three used to depend upon one another. Interestingly, this risk rating 2.0 has disassociated the flood insurance program from the mapping program by saying we no longer consider flood zones. So it is a very, you know, from an academic point of view, a fascinating departure. From a practical on the ground point of view, I don't think this is going to be sustainable. My guess is that just what happened after the Bigger Waters 2012 Act completely changed how FEMA did its floodplain regulations. I believe that there's going to be enough of a backlash that Congress will go back and adjust risk rating 2.0.
Okay. Well, I also
Don't
have
count on
I believe it's later this month. Yeah, later near the end of this month, I'll be participating in the virtual Cap to Cap this year with the flood team, and we'll be speaking to federal members of Congress and federal departments on flood-related topics. So I'll make sure and bring this up to that team as well and to those individuals we're meeting with. So,
right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan.
We'll await the letter.
Okay. Next up, item 540.
Better hurry.
545, 2021. County Administrator, approve and authorize chair to sign first amended Community Development and Services Agency Director Employment Agreement.
Yes. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Kevin Mallon. This item is essentially an administrative cleanup of an item that was previously discussed with the board that had to do with the way we had calculated the salary for the community development director position, and PERS interpretation of what was could be what portion of the salary could be. I guess the term, what we call it PERSable, but essentially it could be applied towards your retirement versus what they would not apply towards your retirement. So some cleanup needed to be made. The board already approved the change in the salary on the salary schedule, and then this cleanup would put the contract with Mr. Lee in alignment with the new salary schedule.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, so moved.
Okay. I have a first from Supervisor Vasquez, a second from Supervisor Fletcher. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I see no public comment. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Thank you. It's unanimous.
Great, thank you. We have one more action item on the agenda for today. It's under ordinances and public hearings. Would you like to read the introduction, please, Rochelle?
If you challenge in court the action or decision of the Yuba County Board of Supervisors regarding a zoning, planning, land use, or environmental protection matter made at any hearing described in this notice, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at such hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the Yuba County Board of Supervisors at or prior to such hearing. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual or group. The first item, 503-2021, County Administrator Public Hearing. Hold public hearing and adopt resolution approving amendment to Recology Yuba-Sutter Collection Service Agreement for associated rates pertaining to the maximum service rates, Ponderosa Landfill Closure and Transfer Station. This was continued from Tuesday, September 28th, 2021.
Great, thank you. I will open the public hearing for item 503-2021. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Supervisor Bradford, members of the board, Sean Powers, Assistant County Administrator. As described, we continued this item from September 28th. This allowed us to take a second look after we had put the agenda together to add some supplemental information to the item that was agendized for the 28th. I do want to open this up. We do have a slight change to the resolution, mostly because the item was continued. On the resolution in the fourth paragraph down where it says now, therefore be it further resolved, the last two words being upon adoption, we'd like to strike that and change that to October 1st, 2021. This was merely a clerical error from the item being continued. So we'd like to make that change to the resolution. The clerk's been provided a copy of that updated and hopefully your board received that. Besides that, with just the information we've added to the item, we've tried to clearly outline what we did by showing you all the changes in bold and underlined. The items that were presented on the 28th are the same. We just supplied additional information. As I presented on September 28th, we talked about making amendments to the agreement that were merely confined to Exhibit G and Exhibit H. Those were the Ponderosa transfer fee elements and the Ponderosa transfer rates. After we took a look at that with the agenda, Exhibit A, that's part of the agreement, shows the very granular nature of how the transfer fee element is applied throughout the fee structure. So we wanted to add that to the agenda with working with council to make sure that we had everything included in your agenda for consideration today. So with that, I would open it up to any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Comment, I spoke prematurely on the last item, so clarity, I'll approve this motion, make that motion to approve.
Second.
We have a first from Supervisor Fletcher, a second from Supervisor Vasquez.
Sorry.
Any public comment on this item? Okay. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for a roll call vote.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Thank you. It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up is correspondence. It is as listed on the agenda, and then we'll move to board and staff member reports. Supervisor Vasquez.
I think I said enough for today, so I'll pass.
Supervisor Blazer.
Oh, well, there's a lot to talk about, but I'm not going to go there. I've had conversations over the past with like the consortium and homeless related people. And I think I've been using a designation of vagrants and other descriptions, but I'm starting to see the term DS population pop up, which is good. DS stands for declining services. And I'm hoping that all these agencies are going to start focus on the DS population and try to break that down and solve that, because almost 100% of what we see around town, I feel, is DS population. And it's a very difficult one to solve. So I think we're making a little progress, but it's a tough one. Thanks.
I think my only report is my apologies to County Council for misunderstanding something earlier.
Wait a minute.
That's the end of my
Mark this date
report.
on the calendar here.
Supervisor Fletcher, anything else?
So a couple of quick items. Hoping that somewhere in the near future from County Council, we would have a resolution on catastrophic wildfires opportunity for the board. And I think you have a copy of that one. If that can be looked at. I think it's coming. Okay. And then another two quick items on behalf of what we just heard on the flood is through the FAIR plan, just to give you an idea, very similarly, that I have two houses within a mile of one another. One came back at same exact coverage, $4,647 a year. The second one came back at $10,272. Almost identical homes and coverages. Built within their system are arbitrary numbers that can be attached to a fire policy that can be very detrimental to the foothills and fire insurance. Something that hopefully we can work on in the future. Again, back to NACO. I've asked the second vice chair to join us here in a few weeks at a meeting. She is flying out. We'll have discussions. Won't be repaired or fixed shortly, but it's a process that takes time, and the same kind of process with the National Flood Insurance. And where do we go from here, and how do we support the community? But these are the things that are crossing my mind on a daily basis.
Great, thank you. Council, anything?
Nothing, thank you.
CA Mellon? CAO Mellon?
CEO Mallon, yes. I just wanted to draw the board's attention to that very important item on the leatherback sea turtle. No, on the announcement of the clerk recorder's retirement, that she announced that she would retire effective December 27th of this year. Her term does not end then, and so that will make it for a decision of the board on whether to appoint or not for the remainder of her term. That decision of the board would have to come after her retirement date. So this is an item that the board will need, if the board so chooses, to discuss at your January meeting would be the earliest that you could discuss it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
We have a choice not to appoint?
There could be, sorry, I'm stealing it. Mike did all the legal research. I'll let Mike fill you in.
There is a provision in the government code that provides the person who is next in authority to perform the duties of the office if that office is vacant. So, and the key there being temporarily. That's the word that we'll have to struggle with.
Okay. No, I get to talk first. Like, you know, I had an entire 2-page thing to talk about, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and skip that, and we'll have a break. And actually, we will. It's not adjourn. We will recess, and when we come back from recess, we will go into closed session. And the closed session items are listed on the agenda. So, and then of course we'll report out publicly at the end of closed session. So let's do a 5, if we need it, 10-minute break, and then we'll see you in closed session.
Recording stopped.
We can show you how. Live streaming can be simple and not expensive. You may already have the basic tools right in your hand. But it's more than just pushing live to communicate effectively. That's where Yuba-Sutter.live and Live Streaming YS on Facebook can help you. Make it easy to jump in. Just give us a call at 530-301-2931 or visit our website, www.yuba-sutter.live. Yuba-Sutter's home of live streaming and live streaming tools, live streaming services, technology, and training. Live streaming is Yuba-Sutter.live.